On the day after the government in Benin announced that an attempted coup had failed, in a televised address, President Patrice Talon told the nation that loyal members of the security forces had defeated a small group which had attempted to seize control of the country on Sunday. Gunshots were heard in the capital, Cotonou, and some journalists who work for the state broadcaster were held hostage. Later on Sunday, the Nigerian authorities announced that their counterparts in Benin had asked for assistance, and Nigeria, which is its neighbor to the east, said it had sent fighter jets to help stop the mutiny, and that this country's troops had joined a multinational ECOWAS force to help stabilize Benin.
Un groupuscule de soldats, sous prétexte.
Beninese men and women, my dear compatriots, I am addressing you tonight because our country experienced events of extreme gravity today. Indeed, a group of soldiers, under the pretext of false claims, undertook a mutiny aimed at attacking the institutions of the Republic and destabilizing our nation, thereby challenging the democratic order. Such an action would have had the consequence of plunging our country into a reckless adventure with disastrous outcomes. It would have brought to a halt the development process initiated by our country thanks to the efforts undertaken by all its sons and daughters. In such circumstances, as a Republican duty, it falls upon me, in my capacity as President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and guarantor of the country's stability, to take the appropriate measures to thwart the actions of adventurers seeking to drag us back into a regrettable past. Therefore, in coordination with the Command of the Defense and Security Forces, I have undertaken the necessary actions to maintain peace and ensure the safety and tranquility of everyone across the national territory. I would like here to salute the sense of duty of our army and its leaders, who remained Republican and loyal to the homeland. With them, we confronted the situation, retook positions, and cleared the last pockets of resistance of the mutineers. This commitment and mobilization allowed us to thwart these adventurers and prevent the worst for our country. This act will not go unpunished. I take this opportunity to congratulate our defense and security forces as a
All right, to analyze the foiled coup in Benin Republic, the Nigerian government's intervention, and of course the reported rescue of some abducted school children in Niger State, we're now joined by Professor Chris Kwaja. He's a professor of international relations and strategic studies, Center for Peace and Security Studies at Modibo Adama University, Yola. We also have Dr. Charles Omole. He's a lawyer, he's a national security expert and Director General, Institute for Police and Security Policy Research. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Now let's pivot. Let's start with the coup that failed in Republic of Benin, Nigeria's next door neighbor. If this coup had succeeded, it would have been the 8th successful coup in West Africa, the West African sub-region. Now, first off, let me start with you, Dr. Omole. What do you think really is giving rise to what is now becoming officially a coup belt in West Africa? Why West Africa? What are the fundamental issues here?
Well, I mean, the key factors are always there, that you can't have coup where people are largely satisfied with the performance of their government. Part of the challenge ECOWAS actually have is ECOWAS appear to be silent when there are misgovernance by democratic governments, and only seem to have their voice when there is a coup. But the question, I think, is whether what the president did was lawful, in terms of the intervention.
You're talking about President Tinubu?
President Tinubu,
yes. Nigeria's intervention.
In my own analysis, on two legs, it is lawful. From the international side, we have, let's actually start nationally. Section 5 of our Constitution, subsection 4, says President cannot declare war except with the approval of the National Assembly.
Right.
But there was an exception there, what we call defensive security response, which is if Nigeria was attacked, then the president can deploy the military without the National Assembly and then get a retrospective permission later. Right. Now, but the issue here is this is Benin Republic. Now, the ECOWAS protocol set up in 1981 under Section 4 of that protocol, that actually mimicked the Section 5 of NATO protocol, which is an attack on one is an attack on all. You know, NATO has a Section 5, ECOWAS has Section 4 of their own treaty. That was expanded in 1999 to include that the attack on nations in ECOWAS include attack on democratic institutions, which means coup is now considered, or internal sort of war can be considered as attack that sort of invokes Section 4. So from that perspective, you can say an attack on Benin Republic, technically, legally, is an attack on Nigeria, since we signed on to that protocol. So on that basis, that for me solidifies the legality of the intervention of the president. But by and large, in terms of ECOWAS credibility as a whole, that's a different argument entirely. That the citizens of ECOWAS need to see ECOWAS more as championing the cause of the people. Because right now, it looks like ECOWAS keeps quiet when all the nonsense is going on, and suddenly there is coup or something happens, they find their voice. They need to be leading from the front.
Okay, so ECOWAS is reactive and not proactive despite mechanisms in place. Professor Kwaja, let me come to you. I mean, this failed coup comes barely 4 months before the next presidential election and the end of President Talon's term in office. Why do you think the soldiers decided to take this decision now, 4 months to the election? And what does it say about the fragility of, democracy in the sub-region? Because Benin Republic is considered as one of the most stable democracies with multi-party politics in the region.
I was opportuned to be part of a team that worked on a document that focused on the fragility in Africa. The United States Institute of Peace authored a document that looked at coastal West Africa with focus on fragility. And one of the points captured in that report was about the rise of non-state actors or the inability of the state to confront the emergence of actors that have the capacity to undermine state authority. And we've seen that happen across many countries within the Sahel, where individuals connive with other actors to topple governments. The military cannot just undertake such coups alone. They need weapons, they need money. Where are all these coming from? Certainly they are coming from other sources outside the state. With respect to Benin Republic, first, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu need to be commended for the swiftness in supporting the government of Benin. You recall that in 2003 under Obasanjo, South Tome and Principe had the same challenge, and Obasanjo acted. In 2017, we saw the Yaya Jammeh Adama Barrow issue with respect to Jammeh's attempts to undermine democracy in the Gambia, and Buhari was very active and straightforward on his position to say we must restore democracy, and Tinubu is doing the same now, which is quite commendable. I think it's not about war. The situation in Benin Republic is not a declaration of war, because deploying such troops basically is about show of force. From the perspective of military aid to civil power, that is also an attempt by the Nigerian government to ensure that there is stability across the region. And you know, Benin Republic is very strategic to Nigeria, the stability of Benin. And there is every sense that the government of Nigeria acted in that context to ensure that the fire next door does not have a contagious effect when it comes to some of the consequences of that coup. And we've seen that so far, everything about democracy in Benin has been restored so far. It's now on the part of Patrice Talon to now look inwards to ask some basic questions. Why did the coup or the attempted coup happen? What are the things I do that have made it possible for such people to take on my government? One of the key issues we see with governance across West Africa today is public discontent with respect to the attitude and behavior of their leaders. In the midst of poverty, misery, crisis, you see the opulence, you see the extravagant spendings that political leaders continue to exhibit with impunity.
Right.
You see
let's bring it back
many of these citizens now comparing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. There. Let's bring it very quickly back to Dr. Charles Omole. Still staying briefly on Nigeria's what has now been described as a salutary intervention on the part of Nigeria in pushing that coup in Republic of Benin. Does it reinforce Nigeria's position as a big brother in West Africa? And on the other hand, again, you say that ECOWAS seems to be weakening. How do you bring back the relevance or strength of ECOWAS side by side with Nigeria standing, its own as a defender of democracy in the sub-region?
Well, I mean, ECOWAS really, given Nigeria's position in terms of strength, numbers, and everything else, 80% of ECOWAS is Nigeria in terms of, capacity and everything else. So really, if I say, if Nigeria is a sick patient of ECOWAS, if I want to use that exact example, the others don't have the voice to speak effectively. But if Nigeria is now the exemplar in ECOWAS, then it's easier for ECOWAS to talk to everybody else. So the challenge really is the fact that we are the biggest player in ECOWAS. And if we ourselves are having challenges, then clearly ECOWAS will be reluctant to, it's just like United Nations. When you talk about some of the United Nations institutions, their bill is paid 80% by the United States.
Right.
So clearly, when one country is paying 80%, they will have more voice and more influence. And I think that's what's happening also with ECOWAS.
We're being wrapped up, but very quickly, let me stay with you, Dr. Omole, on the issue of the return of 100 Niger pupils. Of course, President Tinubu has ordered, that others should be rescued and no Nigerian should be in captivity. Your thoughts on these developments?
It's a sad incident that we are talking about kidnapping again, in this country.
Right.
Kidnapping is an economic venture in Nigeria, and I think the government needs to recognize that. Kidnapping started by kidnapping of foreigners in the Niger Delta for money. Then they moved to kidnapping rich people. Then when rich people fortify themselves, then they say, okay, who else has the deepest pocket? Government. So when they are going to these poor schools to kidnap these children, they are not expecting their parents to pay ransom. They know their parents are poor. The only people they are targeting is the government. And therefore, the more embarrassed the government is by the nature of the kidnapping, the more the government will respond. So it's a pure economic activity. And I think continuing to pay them and have all negotiations with them only enables them to continue. I think there's a time now for us to take decisive action, which is, yes, sadly, there may be some collateral damage, but we need to extinguish these people once and for all.
Professor Kwaja, you have the last words tonight. And I want us to wrap up on the coup patterns that we have seen. Even though it failed in Benin Republic, it was successful in Guinea-Bissau a few weeks ago. Are there recurring vulnerabilities in West Africa that is propelling this pattern? And how worried should the sub-region be? And perhaps if you want to chip in on the release of abducted children as well in Niger State.
As long as the political class continue to exhibit reckless tendencies when it comes to the management of public resources, they will lay the foundation for coup to happen in West Africa. So the only way to deal with that is to ensure that citizens get value for votes. And value for votes means good governance. Value for vote means security and public safety. In the context of what we see today when it comes to the kidnapping and abduction of students, of children from schools, is quite unfortunate. And my position is that this is avoidable because once you have a government in place, and the primary duty of government is the protection of lives and property, then government must, as a matter of priority, put in place the necessary architecture for public safety. To what extent are we leveraging on ICT as an enabler in ensuring that we monitor all that is happening? To what extent are we leveraging on high-tech fighter jets that have the capacity for air-to-surface launching with precision? That is also a major area that we should look at. The Armed Forces launched a Joint Doctrine Center recently, and the Joint Doctrine Center is very central to the whole question of collaboration and synergy amongst and between the armed forces of Nigeria. This is something that needs to be implemented. I'm happy that the former CDS who launched the Joint Doctrine Center is now the Minister of Defense. So he needs to now implement exactly what he had as a vision for the country's defense. We also need to look at what the building blocks will be with respect to decentralization of policing. That is also very important because as it stands, the federal policing system we have is not enough to guarantee public safety in Nigeria.
No doubt, even one eye is not enough for us to have this conversation, but I must thank both of you gentlemen for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Professor Chris Kwaja is the Center for Peace and Security Studies, Modibo Adama University, Yola. Dr. Charles Omole is also he's a lawyer, national security expert, joining us tonight on Newsnight.